There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Kohler, and I am, president of the Reading League California. Let me pull my slide up there. Now you can see it. All right. We are going to get started with Melissa and Lori from the Melissa and Lori Love Literacy podcast. So if you are a fangirl like me, you're in for a treat tonight. Let me start by saying that we're really excited to have you with us tonight. We'd like to encourage you to follow us on social media and check out our website. You'll see those slides in a second. I want you to know that originally this was intended to be a special event for some of our paid members. And this morning when I sent out the reminder message, I sent it to a whole bunch of you. So if you are here and you are not yet a paid member, we just want to encourage you to join with the paid membership feature, because we plan on hosting fun things like this. It's just for a special treat for our paid members as the year rolls on and as we roll into next year. So we're glad you're here with us. We will send the recording out in addition. And I want to remind everyone that the Reading League California is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization run by educators, administrators, and passionate literacy experts from all over California. The membership dues that folks pay and the donations that they make when they sign up for events helps us keep the lights on, helps us offer free, high-quality content, and helps us spread information about the science of reading throughout the state. We have some really special speakers, and Jordan and I are going to co-host, and we're going to toss questions back and forth. So in the process of doing that, Melissa and Lori are going to be able to introduce themselves and talk to you a little bit. I'll put this slide up again toward the end, so if you want to join, you can click that QR code. But for now, I am going to stop share, and I'm going to turn it over to our amazing Secretary and Director of Membership, Jordan Paxiamarian, who's going to ask the first question. So welcome, Melissa and Lori. Nice to see you.
Yes, welcome and welcome everyone. Thanks, Kristen. Okay, so I guess without any further ado, we can get started. We all know your origin story is part of the intro to your podcast, but what is one thing listeners might not know about your move from teaching, coaching, being in schools to podcasting? Or why did you start the podcast?
Well, I'm going to let Lori start. I'm Melissa, everybody. If you haven't seen my face, just heard my voice. But I'm going to let Lori start because this was her idea. So I'm going to give her all the credit and let her start us off.
Well, it might have been my idea, but Melissa actually had the equipment in her basement. So randomly. So it wouldn't have happened without all of the stuff either, or her awesome brain. But we were just having a lot of conversations as we were shifting from more of a balanced literacy approach to a structured literacy approach. So structured literacy included phonics curricula that was aligned with reading science, as well as knowledge building curriculum. And as we were having lots of these conversations, we kept saying to each other, why didn't we know about this? We were skeptical about some of the other things that our district had been doing for a long time that we really didn't totally understand, but hadn't ever felt, I guess, maybe safe enough to admit it to anyone, like such as guided reading. I remember like talking to her about leveled texts and saying like, I just don't totally get it. I don't understand like what makes a level M versus a level N or an O. And it never made sense to me in teaching. And I really tried to understand, and I sat in professional developments, and it just never really clicked for me, which I think is probably why in hindsight, why I was kind of ready to gather this information, right, in the reading science world, because I was kind of a skeptic already. But we were having tons of these conversations, and it just kind of felt selfish to keep it to ourselves. We knew there were a lot of teachers out there who were probably in our same boat, or maybe not yet, or maybe 10 years ahead of us, light years ahead of us. And we just wanted to reach out and kind of be vulnerable and share how we were feeling and what we were learning with everyone around us. And yeah, so I went to Melissa and said, I think we should do a podcast. And she happened to have all the equipment in her basement. And I said, great, I'll be over on Thursday. And I just showed up at her house with nothing really. And we recorded a podcast. Go ahead, Melissa.
I mean, yeah, that kind of really captures it. But I mean, we didn't really know where it was going. We didn't have like a 5-year plan in mind or anything like that. We were just like, we were learning, we were working at the district in Baltimore at that time. So, I mean, I think we had more like, this could help the teachers we're working with in mind, was, you know, the immediate where we were at the time. So we're glad to see where it's come 5 years later, but you know,
And we do plan now. We plan our whole year. So
we plan every episode and far out, like where we want to go. But yeah, that first few, we didn't even quite know whether this would be interviews with people, just me and Lori talking with each other as we were learning. We weren't quite sure where we wanted to go with it, but as soon as we started reaching out to some experts in the literacy field, and both like people who were on the ground doing work, and Natalie Wexler was one of our first, you know, as soon as we started, we're like, we get to learn from them too. This is great. Like, this is a great learning opportunity for us, and we can share it with other people. Let's keep going. And we did. So here we are.
yeah, I think we kind of scared Natalie Wexler at first because we showed up to her. It was when the Knowledge Gap had just come out, and we showed up. I made us shirts that said "Wild About Wexler," and we showed up to her book signing in Baltimore, where she grew up and had like high school friends. And she said that they teased her mercilessly because they were like, "Who are these people? Like your fangirls?" So like we like had her books. We were like, we were taking pictures with her. But it's okay. We became friends. So
I love that. And how many times now has she been on the podcast? At least 2.
I think 4 times. Four
four.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Twice by herself. Once she was with Judith Hockman with the Writing Revolution. And then once she was kind of like a featured guest with a teacher that we had.
Nice. All right. So, you know, beyond the standard formal definition of the science of reading or of structured literacy, I think one of the things that we all struggle with is kind of an elevator speech for teachers or colleagues. So as you were making this shift, or now that you've said so many words so many times to so many people, what is your elevator pitch definition of the science of reading or structured literacy? Lori, do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay, so I would say my elevator pitch would be everything that we think of as the body of research in which we know to be the science of reading. And there is that bullseye that Stephen Dykstra talks about, right? There are lots of things that we know that we can hit the middle of. But we also want to think about that it's not just phonics. And one of the things I try to keep in mind, and I think I would put a megaphone up and just scream it from the rooftops, is that if we only focus on phonics and we let this movement become phonics based, we're mostly only affecting K2, K3 for 30 minutes a day, give or take, right? A little bit. If we keep in mind that this is bigger than just phonics, this has to do with building knowledge and vocabulary and making sure that we're not teaching comprehension strategies in isolation, that we're using them to gather information and knowledge and then apply it. And of course, phonics is the basis of all of that, right? But if we can affect change in the bigger picture, we are making waves, making changes for pre-K through, birth, right? Through 8th grade and beyond for their entire ELA block. In fact, their entire day, if we can get everyone on board, right? So not content area teachers, not just ELA teachers. So I just think it's so much more than phonics, and that's something that in my elevator pitch would very strongly include. Melissa.
Well, I'll just add to that. So I was in the audience today for the AIMS symposium. I don't know if anyone else was there today, but it was amazing. But it was really interesting reading the comments because there's a lot of people who are very defensive about the science of reading, like, oh, this is, and I was like trying to figure out like, what is their definition of science of reading that they are, that they're feeling really defensive about. And what I took away from their definition was that it was a program that they teach with that they feel very strongly about. And so that was like something that hit me today. I was like, it's not a program, right? It's not any one program. There's not one thing that is the science of reading. And this is it. This is what we all should be doing. And so I think that's really important because I don't think there's just one program out there that's going to meet the needs of every single student. There's some really great programs and we think that they're really helpful, but there's not one silver bullet. So I thought that was really interesting. And then also, this idea of science, we're always improving, right? If you think of science outside of the science of reading, we're always trying to do things better, right? Find out how to do it in a faster way or a better way or a more effective way. And I think we're trying to do that in education too, and especially with reading. So some of the comments I heard today too were like kind of holding on to what even it was good things that they're doing, but but I don't want to let go of that teaching syllables that I that I do. I don't want to let go of that. It's like, well, if what we're learning is that there might be more effective ways, like let's keep our mind open to new research that keeps coming and how we continuously are going to be thinking about changing and becoming more and more effective.
Yeah, it's truly a dynamic state, right? It's ever evolving. So I think that that's really great. Thank you. And that really leads into the next question, I think nicely, which is what realm in the world of literacy instruction do you want to educate yourselves the most on right now in this moment? What's new and interesting to you or really piquing your interest?
I'll let Melissa go over. Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
The thing I've been thinking a lot about is morphology, which doesn't sound like a new interesting thing. I know it's like, yeah, we know about that, but I think it often gets put in a little box with, oh, that's for older kids and vocabulary. That's just over here. But I keep hearing it more and more in everything, right? So in phonics instruction, in spelling instruction, in fluency instruction. So we've heard from Louisa Moats about spelling and phonics and how morphology is so important for that. And we've heard from Marianne Wolf about fluency and how morphology can be incorporated and really affects students' fluency. And it's that's just something I want to kind of like, what does it really look like in those other areas? Because I was a 6th grade teacher, so I'm really familiar with what it looks like for vocabulary for older kids, but not as familiar with what it looks like across the board and how powerful it can be.
Yeah, morphology. I love morphology. I love talking about words. Actually, I was just reading about morphology before we came on. Mine is not very, yours is so specific, Melissa. Mine's
Wait, Lori. Like you can't drop that nugget and then not tell us what you're reading.
Oh, what I was reading. I was editing our I was gonna wait till the end and say I was editing our book. No, it's fine.
Okay, we'll circle back.
We're in final edit rounds of our book. So yeah, we'll drop the title for sure.
Love.
That's a good point though, Kristen. Okay, so morphology is super specific. I was thinking more along the lines of like something that I really want to learn more about is how, like what is going to happen with every state having a different science of reading law or rules or however you want to say it. What is this going to look like? What implications are we going to have for our students tomorrow and for our students 10 years from now? I think it kind of connects to the first answer I gave too, is if we only focus on one part of it, that's like, I noticed some states are very like phonics specific, and then some states aren't doing anything. And then some states are like giving specific curriculum choices to align with reading science. So in the broader sense too, right? In terms of like knowledge building curricula, et cetera. So I'm kind of more intrigued on where that's going to go. And in my head, I keep thinking of it and categorizing it as like an FDA for literacy. And that to me is just something I like thinking about, but it also makes me want to like cry and jump for joy at the same time. I don't know how anybody else feels about science of reading loss, but that's something where it's just, I think it's necessary, but I think it's necessary to really get right away and like right now. Like we cannot wait to get it right later because we've already missed the boat quite a few times. So we've got to keep on.
Nice, nice. I'm wondering about like a surprise impact. So you dug this equipment out of the basement. You started this podcast, and then as things got rolling and became like a real thing, what is one unexpected outcome? What's something that happened that you didn't anticipate? Lori, do you want to start?
Yeah. So you prompted me the last question. I was going to say it here is that Melissa and I got to actually write a book in the Scholastic. I don't know how many of you have read the newest book in the series, or not. It's actually not the newest anymore, right? But Lindsay Kemeny, 7 Mighty Moves, I think is pretty recognizable as of recent. We all have it on our desk. Strive for 5. The Know Better, Do Better comprehension by the Liebens is coming out. So we have a book in the series coming out that we wrote, and that's what I was doing some final edits for before I jumped on. But it just kind of feels surreal that we wrote a book about, like, in this series, I guess. Like it's kind of neat and just feels really surreal. And I don't know, my daughter's like, Mom, please stop talking about reading all the time. And I just can't. So it's like such an honor to be able to do this and to contribute to education and to teachers in this way.
Should we also say one of the surprises is that we don't use any of the equipment from my basement at all?
So true.
We use like a very simple mic that cost us like $50, and that's about all.
You know what we use? We use the microphone that I call it the assembly microphone. You know, when you have school assemblies and somebody stands up and talks into the microphone, that's the microphone we use. And it's like the cheapest microphone of all time, but it works great.
We went through many stages of learning and landed on not the fancy equipment. So here we are. But I would say another one too is just I was looking at Mara's comment about finding the courage to talk to these literacy researchers and leaders, and we really did. Like, I remember Lori and I talking, like giving each other pep talks of like, they're just people. Like, they're just regular people. So it is kind of surprising that, I mean, some people that I feel like I'm even intimidated by at times, like, I saw him speak today, so I will call him out. Claude Goldenberg was one where like, I was really intimidated to speak with him because I just like, he's so super intelligent that I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to have a conversation with him?
I'll just send this to him because he's from California. We'll just send him this recording afterwards.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like, he was so kind, and everyone we've had on has been that way, where it's like, even if we don't know exactly what they're talking about, they love to have our questions and love to teach us, right? And that's like, we're in the same place as teachers. Like, we don't know everything. We definitely don't know everything. And we really do ask the questions that we're like, what does that mean? Because we're not really quite sure. Can you tell us? Can you explain that to us? And now he's like our bud. He went on a different podcast and had our mug on the other podcast. So he's definitely a good friend of ours now, which is, I never would have saw that coming. That's a good surprise, is like seeing some people who seem intimidating actually are very friendly.
I will say most people in the literacy world are like, I will say like 99% of the people who we've met,
yeah,
I feel like would be friends with any of us at any given time. Like if you sent them a text message, they would respond very quickly and very kindly.
We're all in this for the same reasons. We all have the same goals. We all want students to succeed. We all want teachers to be more successful in the classroom, right? We all have these same goals. So it's like, why not help each other and get to those goals?
That's great. I love that. Well, and on that note, as you were starting your podcast and moving through to where we are today, what was that evolution like? What was it like when you started to realize that you were gaining quite a large following? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I know when we first started, it was not a large following when we first started. And so for us to keep going, I think Lori and I kept like talking about, we would compare it to, we used to do PD all the time for our district. And so it was like, well, just think about how many people are like in a PD session. When you do one PD session, what do you have? Like maybe 30 people in a room. So you spend a day with those 30 people, you get to teach them something. So, like if we have 30 people listening, that's great. So we would tell ourselves that to like keep motivating ourselves. And I think I always kept that like analogy in my head of like, just imagine like a room full of this many people. And so now when we look at our numbers that are in the like 10,000 people a week, and it's like, oh my gosh, can you imagine having 10,000 people in a room listening to what we have to say? It's really pretty shocking to think about the number of people that we have the honor of sharing with.
Yeah, and Melissa is really great with data. We always have these data conversations where I call it, we meet on Thursdays. It's our standard meeting time, and we meet for like 3 or 4 hours. And when she does the data talks for me, because she likes to do all the graphing and stuff, and I don't. So I call it, I'm like, let me know when I need to get my mimosa ready. And then I just like sit back and just relax with my coffee, and she just gives me all this data and we just talk about it. But it was funny because the first time we realized, oh my gosh, there's like more than just our families listening. We got very excited. It was like very exciting to think that, okay, well, maybe we should keep doing this because there's more than a handful of people. I think for the first few, we had like 10, 100, it was very, very small. But I think it wasn't just the numbers on the listeners. It also was the guests who gave us a lot of confidence. Like when we asked Natalie Wexler for the first time and she said yes, it was so kind and boosted our confidence so much just to have someone say yes. That then when someone didn't respond or really didn't say anything, or maybe said no, which didn't happen often, I will say, but it was such a confidence boost for us to keep going. And I wish that all of those people knew so much that they gave us as much as, maybe we gave them by asking them. So it was like a nice boost for us there to keep going. But yeah, it just, the numbers as they kept growing was really exciting. And the data talks now are like, I can't even imagine, like, it's just, I think are we in the, Melissa, are we're in the top 1%? Yeah, of like podcasts, which is pretty crazy and awesome that like it kind of just started grassroots and here we are. And I just think a lot of people want to learn about reading and we keep trying to produce the best, and we keep learning too about podcasting on top of all of it. We're always watching podcast webinars, and we meet with a podcast special person to help us like figure out what to do better so that we can keep bringing better content. And Mara, that feedback you gave about the little knowledge nuggets, they're really helpful. Thank you for that. That's helpful too. If there's anything you all like, please let us know. We'll keep doing it. Because we love to hear what you're all loving and what's helping everyone learn the most.
Right.
One thing I want to add is from the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to not just have like the big name experts on, but keep to really have teachers and leaders, district leaders, school leaders, people who are on the ground doing the work. We wanted to make sure their voices were heard too, and we still really value that, and we keep that as part of our mission, is to not just talk about the research, but like what is it actually happening in the classroom.
Yeah, we like are totally on Twitter, just scouting people out. We're like, who's an awesome teacher? Who's an Instagram? Like, just trying to find. And then we always love organizations like the Goyen Foundation. They have amazing fellows, and we're in touch with them all the time so that we can make sure that we have really valuable input from teachers and leaders who are doing the work. And so that's something, and we're always like just trying to scout out. And so, we just appreciate so much that everyone kind of like gives us a little heads up when we ask and contributes in that way. So
that's nice. We'll put the link to the Goyen Foundation when we send out the recording so that you can check out that link too. All right, this may be a tricky question and you may not want to say, but you have to. It's probably tricky, but is there a favorite interviewee that you have personally, and why? Is there a
Do you want me to
favorite
start, Lori?
guest that you've had on?
Lori knows I have a favorite.
Melissa's a favorite. I came up with a favorite, but I like everyone. Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm not shy about my favorite, but it's also because the people that we had on also wrote a text that was like an aha moment for me. Like when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, my brain exploded. It changed the way I thought about teaching reading. And so it was Meredith Lieben and Sue Pimentel, and they wrote the placing the text at the center of an ELA classroom. That's not quite right, but it's close. Anyone that knows what the full title is can write it. But yeah, when I read that, it was just like it kind of, I was full on, like, from my early days of teaching, like, checking off standards, did they master those standards? Like, that was how I was taught to teach, like, but I always, like, in the back of my head was thinking, like, that doesn't feel right. Like, how do they master finding the main idea? Because then they go read another text and they can't find the main idea of that one, but they found the main idea of this one. So how can I say they mastered that? Like, it doesn't quite make sense. And so this was the first thing I read where it was like, and it wasn't just like random people, it was the people who wrote the standards who were like, that's not what you should be doing. I was like, thank you. Thank goodness someone is saying that is not what we should be doing. And so the way they just like kind of laid out what we should be doing and really tying in like all of those, using the standards in order to understand a text, but that the text is what should be driving, and the kids should be reading to really get the text, right? Understand it and make sense of it and enjoy it or learn something from it, is what the whole point of all those standards really is, not just to check off a box and say they can do it. So those, and that interview just is great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, they were amazing. If you haven't listened to that one yet, have a glass of wine after this and listen to it and read I dropped in the chat, read the text at the center report. It's awesome. It will blow your mind. I thought Melissa was going to cry when we were doing
Well, also Julie Washington, I might have cried.
I know, Julie. It was amazing. I will say, I think mine was episode 100. Stephen Dykstra, I think about that every day that I do this work. I just think of the students who need us so desperately, and he's able to elevate that in a way that I think just really hits home. And it also was our 100th episode, so it's just feels symbolic, episode 100. And I just remember crying during that one and just feeling so emotional, and really just trying to remember each and every day that that's why we're here, that this is the work that we're doing, so that students don't have to go through the trauma of not being able to read. And that, I just think it's really humbling when we bring it back to the center of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, if you have someone else on your list that's at the top tier for your favorite interviewee, or anyone else connected to this work, if you could have dinner with any 3 people connected to this work, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
So one of the people on my
Are
list,
they the same? I think they're the same. We normed on this, right?
we normed on them.
Yeah.
One of the people that was on my list is someone that I don't know a lot about their work and I want to know more. And so this is kind of sometimes that's what we do instead of doing the really, really hard work, is like, this pushes us to like, we have to read what they wrote because we're going to have them on the podcast. So that's what we're going to do. But this person's not alive, so I don't have that benefit. It's William Van Cleve. And I don't know much about his work, but I know that so many people say such great things. And also writing, I feel like, is a place where I need to learn more and want to learn more. And so, yeah, he's one that I would love to learn more about what he worked on. And also I would just love to chat with him if I could.
I'll add the next one. So, and then you go third. So Julie Washington, I think she is just such a straight shooter, and she doesn't play with words. She just says what it is. And I appreciate that. I think, we kind of are not in a place where we can dance around. We have to just be direct and keep it moving. At the same time, she does it so kindly. I think what she says can be received because she really focuses on students and student outcomes and what we need students to be able to do. And I think, Kathy, you asked in the chat for a book or a webinar. I'm thinking on it. Know Better, Do Better is really great. But I do think, I don't even, like, what I would say to that question is, like, focusing on the student outcomes is, and what student actions I think is so helpful to then change teacher actions. So I'm trying to think of a book too that would help other than Know Better, Do Better, but that's a great rec. But anyway, Julie Washington, I think, would be an awesome person to have dinner with because she'd kind of balance out and the conversation here. Melissa, you want to share the third person?
So our third one is a little bit controversial. This is why we would have him at dinner and not necessarily on the podcast right now, which is Mark Seidenberg. And I think I'm really interested because I think he throws out some things sometimes that I think do push the conversation about science of reading. Sometimes in a good way. I know sometimes it can be a little offensive too. So it's like, I just would love to be able to pick his brain because I do think he does have some good pushes and some cautions of where we're going with the science of reading. So I would love to be able to have that conversation with him, but I know he can be a little spicy. So that's why we're going to just have a dinner conversation.
Yeah.
I love those. Yeah, William Van Cleve, man, that is such a tremendous loss. We'll link his website as well because yeah, his work is still so great to go back and look at. If you're OG trained, you kind of get some of exposure to him, but if you're not, then sometimes he's not as well known or as accessible. Okay, so if you could, so in the context of as an educator, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. But if you could go back and give your younger self some advice, younger me, being open to interpretation, like you're not implying that you're not young at this very moment. What would your advice be to yourself looking back on, you know, the educational journey that you've been on? I'm going to say Lori because she's right here in front of me now.
Perfect. I wrote like a little novel on this in my book, preparing, so, but I won't share the whole thing. But here, I would say, before you go to a university, check out the way they're teaching reading before you spend tons and tons of money, and not only go to that same university for undergrad, but then go back for your master's and continue to learn how to teach reading wrong, but then also go back for your administrative professional degree and also not get a lick of how to teach reading as a leader either. So I would say Towson University, let's update our ways that we teach reading and writing. And I would have told my younger self to really go like with a fine-tooth comb before applying for colleges, go through and make sure that they were aligned, because then I would not have so many regrets, just like probably a lot of us on here. That's why we're here, right? I wouldn't have all the regrets of how many students like faces I can see that I did not do as much as I could have. So yeah, college was a big one for me. I would definitely go back and do some research there.
Yeah, absolutely the same. And I would, you know, I wish I knew what to even look for. You know, I mean, both Lori and I did a master's program to become a reading specialist. We took reading specialist assessments to become reading specialists in the state of Maryland. Like, you think you're doing the right thing, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like we're taking the wrong course of action here, but to know even what to look for there, because I look back on the courses I took and I just think like, why was that even a course in? I mean, I literally took a course that was called creativity. And I'm like, what was that about? That could have been a lot better use of my time learning how to do what we need to do. But I think I would have loved if I was getting trained in what I was supposed to be getting trained in, I would have loved a lot more experience because I only taught at the middle school level. I would have loved to have more experience teaching younger students as well, to just really learn how to do that. I have it with my son at the moment, but he's just one kiddo.
Right. Well, now that you do know better, what are 3 things that teachers can do in the classroom right now?
Okay, so we organized this response based on our book because we've been knee deep in editing. So, how about I start with comprehension because I feel like it always gets to go last. So, all right, I'll start with comprehension. I would say build knowledge through read alouds and through text sets on topics. So, and use complex, rich grade level texts to do all of those things. Make sure that students have an experience every day with rich, authentic literature and informational text. Unless you want to do fluency?
I was going to do phonemic awareness. Can I do
Oh,
phonemic
okay, good, good.
Yeah, if you've been listening to our last few podcast episodes, we've really talked a lot about phonemic awareness. And so we'll just push that same message we've heard from those experts, which is to really limit the amount of time you're doing phonemic awareness oral only instruction and connect letters as soon as you can, very quickly, so that they're making that connection between hearing the sounds and seeing those letters as quickly as possible, and focusing just on, blending, segmenting are the biggest takeaways for phonemic awareness instruction. So, and they have the biggest impact on reading. So focusing in on your phonemic awareness instruction. And I know, we've had people on too that said, well, it's only 10 minutes a day, it's only 15 minutes a day, but a lot of those minutes really add up, when you don't need to do it. So just rethinking your phonemic awareness instruction.
Awesome. I'll do the last one. For fluency, I said choose a protocol and do it every day. So get really good at doing one thing for fluency, making sure, again, that students are reading small chunks of hopefully grade level text. If that's too much, then decodable text, and help them get to that small piece of grade level text. But I think choosing one protocol, like for example, echo reading or whatever it might be, choose that one thing and then do it every day. Do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then don't worry about changing until after 4 weeks. They've got it. You've got it. You can change the text. You can change, I don't know, ways that you're doing it, but just get that protocol down, that strategy down, however you want to say it. And then after that, introduce one new one. So just get really good at it, and then they'll see progress, you'll see progress, and then you'll be able to add from there. So I think sometimes we get overwhelmed, especially with fluency, oh, there's just so much. We need a text and it's, I don't really know what to do. There's so many ways to do it. Just choose one and go. Kind of reminds me of when we talked with Mary Dahlgren recently. I asked her, I said, how much information do we need to get started? I feel like sometimes that is the hindrance, even to anything, right? I didn't make my spinach muffins today, so I'll just eat ice cream for breakfast, right? How much do we need to actually get started to step forward? And so I think with fluency, just do that one thing and then go.
Those are great. Those are really great. I was scribbling away during that one. I appreciate the permission to not have it all figured out and have it all perfect as you get started. I think sometimes we hold ourselves too accountable. We hold ourselves up because we want it all to be just right. And just like our students, we learn so much in the process of implementation that refines our practice. And if you wait till it's just the enemy of being great is not starting at all. So thank you for giving us permission to just start small, do one thing at a time, right? And then make sure the students are comfortable with those routines and practices before we layer on something else or something more.
Yeah. I always say too, Kristen, I always say work smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if you already have those knowledge building texts, pull the fluency passage right from there. Just work smarter, not harder. I always feel like sometimes as teachers, we're asked to do so many things. It's okay, what can I do? How's the smartest way to approach this with the least amount of work, or effort for this moment?
Yeah, I do agree. I think that's sage advice. All right. So the next question we've already hinted a little bit. And so the next question was, tell us what's new and what's coming up. So if you're sitting at a desk somewhere, drum roll, please. And let's hear about what's around the corner for you guys.
Yeah, Melissa, do you want to share? And I'll drop the link in.
Yeah, so I mean, we've mentioned it a few times already, but our biggest news is that we have our book coming out, which is already available on Amazon, which is really, we didn't even know that it was available until last week. Someone at another conference told us, they're like, oh, you know, your book's already on Amazon. I was like, oh, no, we did not. But it's called The Literacy 50. And it's a book full of 50 different questions that we got from a lot of listeners and we see asked all the time. And we answered them. So we answered them in a very easy to follow way with very quick hands-on things that teachers can do in the classroom for each of those questions, along with podcast episodes if they want to learn even more.
Yeah, and every question has something to go with it. So something to print, something to use, a strategy to use, so you can bridge that research to practice gap right away.
I love that. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Do you know when it's going to be ready and published and out?
Yeah, so you can order it now, but it won't be delivered until June 5th.
Okay. Oh, perfect for the summer.
Yeah.
Yay. Thank you for the link. We'll put that in our resources as well. And we'll see if we can get it up on our website in our resources section in California so it can live there too. So,
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and we will have a book club at some point around it. We don't have exact dates for that, but look out for that.
We will have a summer author series this summer too. We'll be doing the interviewing, but other authors. But yeah, I think at some point we'll also talk about our book probably.
Good deal. That's so great. I'm so excited to see it. There's so many nice digestible resources now. I mean, I love myself a good, deep, thick Louise Spear swirling book, but it's also nice to have something really practical, digestible. Yeah, that doesn't make my brain hurt too much.
Yeah. Well, we didn't realize till we were authors in the series that all of these books are exactly 160 pages. Everything is included. So it's very, very digestible, I would say.
Got it.
Yeah. Fun fact.
All right. Jordan and I pulled a few questions from the chat. So Jordan, do you have one queued up at the top there?
I do have, there's one at the top, but I think you already spoke a little bit to this about, overcoming, the imposter syndrome that might occur as you're going through this interviewing process or working through your podcasts. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that, or I can shift to another question if you'd rather?
Yeah, I think we definitely are just vulnerable, like we do ask questions. Sometimes we know the answer. We know that well, teachers might have this question because when I was in the classroom, I had that question. But a lot of times we are asking legitimate questions of things that we don't quite understand, and so we're just mostly being vulnerable and making sure we understand so that others understand as well.
Yeah, or bridging things that we understand, but or that we think we have a good grip on, but we want to hear from an expert who we're talking with. I think there's also kind of like scaffolded questions that sometimes we do ask because we have to have a basic understanding. We want to set a baseline before we dive in deeper. But yes, I think a lot of times we're asking, most times I would say we're asking because we are also genuinely curious. We have also thought out every episode. We have our color-coded notes that we have planned like a lesson plan. We have colors for each of us. We know who's going to ask what question, but we also do kind of authentically let the conversation happen. So if there's a question in the moment that we haven't thought of, we do genuinely ask it. And, it is, yeah, there are most of the questions are questions we're like, oh, okay, we do want to know the answer to that. Or if we've talked with the person, and most of the time we talk in a pre-call, we make sure that that's something that we phrase it so that we're getting to bridge that research to practice. Or if it is a practical question, like how can we go deeper? Like what what do we really want to know about this? How could this really play out in a classroom? So we try to get to as like hearty as possible with that question.
Nice, nice. What about books or webinars that you might recommend for a die-hard balanced literacy teacher? Like, you know, someone who's just resisting. What's their entryway, do you think?
I'm going to say, and Melissa, I feel like you might be able to, I can't remember who did this. It was a webinar and Kristen, I'll get it to after if I can't remember it on it, but
Okay.
there was a webinar that explored a specific curriculum that they were kind of going through to say, like, this is an example of something that is kind of faking their revision to be aligned to reading science. And I kind of thought that was pretty brave, because I think there's so many curricula out there that are not aligned as much as we would want it to be. And then there are some that are really great. And I think it's really hard when you have all of these things in front of you to know the difference. And this webinar walked through how, like, what the elements in this curriculum that were still kind of balanced literacy. And I found that to be really helpful, just from the lens of like receiving that, like having experts walk me through that. I found that to be really helpful. Melissa, do you know what one I'm talking about? I was trying to Google it, but I can't remember. I'll get it for you, Kristen, so that you can link it. I'm sorry that I saw that question. Kathy, I can't remember the name of it right now, but I will remember it for you.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, I think definitely Sold a Story, if that's not something they've already heard. That's definitely one that I think could potentially sway some people. I know that one that Lori and I have gone back and forth with, and I'll be honest, I haven't done my own reading of, is Shifting the Balance. And I know some people like really feel like that's a great first step if someone's really diehard in the balanced literacy world. But then others will say, well, there are some things in there that are questionable, so like, let's not even go there. So a choice to make.
Yeah, that's one I feel like I'm I'm on the fence about. In my district, I've heard people reading it aloud. We're a Lucy district, and I've heard people reading a lot of board meetings as like support of what they're doing. And in my head, I was like, I love that you're wanting to learn about this, and that you're reading a book to learn about it. But at the same time, I wonder if the book is helping you learn the right thing, right? I think the messaging maybe isn't as strong as it should be I don't know, but that's kind of what I was gathering in that moment. Like, if you're using it as defense for the scope and sequence in units of study, then there must be a disconnect somewhere. And I'm just wondering where that is. Is it in the book? Is it in the reader, right? There's lots of factors. So yeah, that was one I think Shifting Balance does come up a lot, but I'm not sure. I think you have to be careful when recommending which resources to use.
Yeah, getting a segue with a, you know, diehard balanced literacy person, I think takes a lot of time and relationship building. And going back to one of your tips, which is just pick one thing. Like, if you can make that connection with that person on one topic, on comprehension or fluency or phonics instruction or spelling lists even, or spelling tests, like pick one concept that seems to be bite-sized and digestible and creates a connection. Because once you tap that connection, I feel like bricks can tumble more easily, but connection is everything.
I always like to think of it like the smallest change that will have the biggest effect. And that can really start things rolling in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah. There is a question about, do you have students and families tell their stories? I mean, some of your teacher people are also parents, and so you get like a twofer there, but have you ever had any episodes with families and kids?
We do have a lot of parents. So we have a lot of episodes with parents. Not a lot, but we do have a lot of, we've done some dyslexia awareness month series. So we do have some specifically just parents who are advocates. I guess I will share, Lori, we have tried to do a couple with students. Just, I think we did 2 with students and neither one, like, just, it was like, when you ask a student a question and they answer in like 2 words, and that just doesn't work on a podcast. We felt like we were trying to like get a lot out of them. So that's a place where we can improve. We would love to have more student voices on, but we definitely need to think about how we get their stories out a little bit better.
Yeah. I think I did one with Presley, my daughter, and she was much younger. She was probably 3 or 4 years ago now, but even as her mom sitting there, she was like, she's in the microphone. She was nervous. I think the whole thing was probably 10 minutes tops. And I was like, oh, is she going to be mortified later about this? Or is she going to be okay with it? Like, she just kept saying like, learn stuff, like, over. It's like, good effort, like, whatever. Yeah. We've done a couple others with kids.
Nervous than you imagine.
Yeah.
They're recording.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got one more here. I cut it off on my screen here. I listened to Leslie Lott a few days ago. She mentioned the need for language structure over background knowledge, if I heard her correctly. Language structure sets the stage for absorbing background knowledge. Any thoughts? And maybe I didn't get her gist. But how are you guys navigating the space of, building language and building knowledge and background knowledge?
I don't know that I'm fully understanding the question, but I see those
I
2
don't
things
either.
inextricably. They're just so linked together. I'm not quite sure how to even separate them.
That was my question. And I guess one of the reasons I appreciate you all is because you are so vulnerable. So I'm listening to Leslie Lott and trying to understand, to get more information about writing. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that she's saying language structures over background knowledge, but I may have heard her wrong. That's always a possibility. And I just thought, oh my gosh, you just have to keep going back to what you know, and to podcasts like yours that allow you to be transparent and learn from. I guess that's, I love thinking, what have I done wrong now?
And I think too, we've had conversations with Leslie too, where we don't necessarily know, like, think there's a lot of like this over this. And I think Lori and I always see it as like, but don't you need both of those things? I don't know why we're trying to pit them against each other and say one is more important than the other. So that's always our take, is like, yeah, it's still important. Like, you can say language structure is important and building knowledge is important. They're both important. So it's all important in reading, and that's what makes it so complex and so difficult, is because it is all tied together and it's all important. So I think we've had that struggle too a few times, where it's like, we don't necessarily want to pit one against each other, because especially in education, once you do, then it's like, oh, well, we don't need to worry about background knowledge.
Right.
Well, yes, we do. Right. So we don't want to say one is more important than the other. They're both important. That's my take.
Appreciate just hearing that. Anyways, get all caught up and I think, oh, what do I need to learn now? And it's overwhelming.
Diana, I think you're on the right track. And that's why, to be honest, first of all, I'm glad you're here, because this is exactly what Melissa and I saw that same post, and I'd commented on it, I think, because I didn't feel like everything was totally accurate, but I texted Melissa right away and with a screenshot, and I was like, can we talk about this? And I did exactly what you just did here. Like, hey, can we talk about this? This is something that doesn't make sense. This is something that I'm struggling to understand. And that's exactly why we started this podcast, was because again, not to be like someone's right, someone's wrong. Just like, we saw this thing. I mean, this happens on Instagram 29 times a day for me, at least. I don't know anybody else, but like, I truly believe that, like, sometimes I don't understand what I'm seeing in terms of the content sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, that's spot on, cool. And it happens all the time. And so I'm so glad, Diana, that you asked this question. I think there's a lot of things out there that, yeah, like, try to pit it as an either or like, oh, there's this thing and I'm bringing this to light, so I'm going to, highlight it and showcase it. But really it's like, it's both of these things, and it's not one or the other. And I don't know. I just wonder a lot about like the things that are out there is like, this is a new thing that does, and then the receiver doesn't make sense. So as I'm receiving the information, it's not totally making sense. I feel like that's something I've learned to kind of take notice of. Like, am I noticing that I'm feeling confused? If I am, I'm probably going to pause and maybe think about this a little bit and not either that, or maybe not give it too much thought and like call a friend. So call us anytime you need to, Diana, because you're right. That's very confusing. Like, email us. We're here.
Like that. Wrestle with yourself, you know? You know, it's important it is.
We know.
I've gotten poor information through the years, and so thank you.
Yeah. That's what, yeah. I'm telling you, this is how we did the whole book, Diana, because we had people like, we had so many questions and I was like, these are great questions. Well, we should answer these, Melissa. You know, and then we're like, I mean, we were writing novels to people in emails, novels. And I was like, this is a book. This is a book. You know? But yeah, exactly for things like that. Imagine trying to write that question out in an email. But yeah, please keep reaching out with questions like that or find your tribe locally, right? In the Reading League here, and then also reach out to us. We'd love to come back and hang out with you all and talk about questions. And yeah, I'm so glad you asked that.
Nice.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I can't wait to see this book. It's going to be fun to read it from the questioning perspective. All right, we are almost out of time, but I believe that you guys have a little bit of a giveaway for us. Is that right?
We do. Yeah, we'd love to give away. We don't have our shirts on right now, but we have Melissa and Lori Love Literacy shirts. So, oh, you have yours on. Good job. I'm heading out, so I didn't wear mine.
You don't wear it everywhere you go?
I know.
Okay, well then I have closed my eyes and pointed to names in the chat. And so you have to be present to win. So if you're still on the call, either drop your email in the chat, or if you can stay till the very end after we wrap things up, and you win a prize. So Whitney George, are you still here with us? Whitney's here. Whitney is a winner. Woohoo!
Yay, Whitney.
Whitney. Yay, stay on the call, Whitney. Katie Kanda. Katie, are you still here? Oh, I see Katie's name in there. Are you still with us, Katie? Woot woot. Katie's a winner. And I have Manuela Marufa. Yay. Okay, you're a winner too. Woohoo. So I want to say a big, huge thank you for indulging me in this little exploration of your podcast. I know how much people benefit from it, but I also know that it's just nice to feel like you have a connection with a fellow teacher in this space, and to be able to, listen to you interview all of these fantastic people with such care and thoughtfulness, but also keeping it very real and accessible and practical for teachers. I mean, the way that you balance all of those things is so meaningful to so many of us. So we thank you. We all thank you. And I can tell by the comments in the chat that it's just a love fest here. It's a fangirl love fest, and we love that.
Thank you for having us. Yes, thank you.
So nice to see so many of you that we've met, and some of you that we have, most of you that we haven't. So thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here.